Everyone, welcome to the September UPDATE board meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, and let's go ahead and start off by standing and saying the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of the Republic. It stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Let's start off with approval of the agenda. I think we might have a proposed modification to the agenda. Well,
I propose that we amend the agenda to include a discussion on NRECA support for an NRECA resolution
okay.
at our regional meeting.
Okay. Second. Any other modifications, questions on the agenda? Okay, then
I move to accept.
Thank
with
you.
the modification.
Second by Kohler. All in favor of accepting the agenda modified with those additions, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Abstaining? Rachel just came in, thank you. Okay, so we have an agenda, and just for clarification, Nicole, we will put that as item C under board action.
Thank you.
On to member comments and concerns section. You have the preamble ready, Graham?
Yes. The board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board will take all member comments under consideration, but will not provide a response during the member comment period. Board asks that each participant's comments pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with applicable board policy. Comments from the public will be directed at the entire board and not to any individual. No personal attacks shall be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website.
Okay, much appreciated. Do we have any member comments today? Is she a visitor, Emily? Would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Emily Broden. I'm a member, and I'm also here on behalf of Salem Citizens Alliance. Just wanted to mention that I'm really excited to see the focus group information come out about the future of the power supply. I have a couple of questions around that. I think the email is a little unclear on whether all people who apply for the focus group are getting to be participants, and if you're not selected, what's the course to provide feedback? I also want to say, obviously, we don't have infinite time, so I understand that there's limited times and dates for it. But I think it would be really good to have the information that will be presented to the focus group also on LPEA's website. So all members, if you can't make it, can access that information. And ideally like a form where you could provide feedback on that information if you couldn't go to one of those meetings but still wanted to provide feedback. Kind of looking at the website, I want to obviously hear a lot more about what you all have been looking to for the future of our power supply. But when you go to the power supply page, it still doesn't mention the vote to exit tri-state, let alone what the idea or what you all are looking at for the future. So I think that could be a good spot to maybe update and host some of that information that's going to be provided to the focus group. You know, we have about a year and a half now left, and it's not a lot of time to get all of the members' feedback on what the future should be. So really starting soon with getting that information out there, I think is really important. So I just want to urge you all to really take what you're going to get to the focus group, maybe provide some more clarity on what that is and who gets to be selected for that and how people who aren't able to participate can grow that. And then I also want to emphasize, I just heard a lot of misinformation about the solar tariffs or bans in the community and where solar is not allowed. And I know that there's a lot of places where solar is still allowed, rooftop solar. So I think having some increase in clarity to your membership on that is really important. I just have heard a lot of kind of misinformation on that. So I feel like it'd be great coming from LPEA. I've heard a lot of really good communication on the Sunnyside Solar project, a lot of great ads. I feel like the membership is really clear and really supportive of that. So maybe taking kind of what you all did for that and applying it to some of these other issues would be really useful. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much for your comments today, and we will certainly take all of that under consideration. Appreciate it. Any other member comments? Anyone online today? Don't see any. Tim?
I just want to note that there was a member that wrote for the board this morning. Kirby.
Yes, I did see that.
So I think we should, I don't know if you want to read it or not, but we should all pay attention.
Yeah, I don't think it's going into today's member comment, but we all saw it, and thank you for pointing it out. If you haven't seen it yet, because it was this morning, check your email and you see another member comment there. Joe Ludowski.
Who's gonna respond to that? Seems like it should come from one person.
Yeah, we'll get a response to it, yeah. Either myself or Graham will respond to that. Thanks for asking. Okay. We don't have any other member comments today. We have someone here today, whose organization we are a member of. So I thought I would introduce Mr. Kent Singer from CREA and give him just a moment or two to say hi to us and thank you for coming down for our annual meeting.
Sure, no, thanks for giving me just a couple minutes on your agenda this morning. I realize it wasn't quite planned. I know you're busy and I won't take much of your time. Just a couple of really quick updates on CREA. We're filling a couple of key staff positions. Our Director of Government Affairs, Government Relations, Tim Coleman, is now going to be a contract lobbyist. But we're going to continue to work with Tim as a contract lobbyist, and we just hired a new person, a gentleman named Taylor Ward, so he's going to start at the end of the month. And we're also filling our Director of Safety and Loss Control Department, and we hope to have somebody on board there in a couple of weeks too. So we're working on that. The rest of the staff is the same as it's been for a while. On legislative issues, I think we're going to have a busy 2025 session on a variety of issues, and I won't go into great detail on any of them. But wildfire mitigation is important to you all. That's important to CREA. It's important to NRECA. We're trying to really raise the level of awareness at NRECA. And you mentioned the Region 7 meeting next week. So all the statewide managers from the West got together a couple months ago at CREA. We're proposing amendments to 3 different NRECA resolutions to try to increase their focus on wildfire mitigation and helping co-ops on that issue. So we'll see if those pass next week in Sacramento. There will be other bills next year. There's probably going to be a bill on public safety power shutoffs, which is a topic that has come up recently. And XL and Front Range shut off 55,000 customers and got some real strong feedback or pushback on that. There's going to be a bill that only applies to investor-owned utilities next year. It doesn't really apply to co-ops. It talks about developing standards that the PUC would approve. And if co-ops want to use those standards as guidance, they can, but they're not required to do that. And we worked with that sponsor of that bill to make sure that it was kind of a light touch on co-ops. And, you all should determine your policy on public safety power shutoffs, not the PUC in our opinion. So I think that's good news. We'll see, drafts always change. But that's likely to, again, not affect co-ops too much. I don't want to, again, I know how much time I have here. We talked a lot about net metering the last year and a half. And I know that's an important issue with every co-op. I think long story short on net metering, after many months of study and working group discussions, there isn't going to be a bill sponsored out of that working group. There could still be other folks who want to address net metering in some way or another at the legislature next year. But CRA is not going to carry a bill. The other utility groups, the Colorado Energy Office is not going to carry a bill. So we're kind of expecting status quo to continue. If the solar industry wants to, tweak the language, they might. I don't know that for sure. So anyway, that's going to come up next year. There will probably be a clean energy plan advancement next year. The legislature, many of the folks want to kind of accelerate the clean energy transition and get to 100% by 2040 versus 2050. That bill was almost introduced this past year, but it wasn't, and it probably will come back in 2025. So those are the real hot button issues we're dealing with the CREA, and I just wanted to give you a quick update. And I really appreciate Holly's work on our board. She does a fantastic job representing you all and really invigorating our board discussions on a lot of issues. So it's very much appreciated. You all to know that. And I'm happy to take any questions. So we went through a lot of things really quickly. Yes.
I'm curious about the net metering, and that we've been kind of following along, and we asked Holly all kinds of questions about it, but why in the end, what are the drivers where no bills coming forward? Is it status quo, like you said, is fine. It was really hard to find consensus.
Well, yeah, it's really hard to find consensus. That's the bottom line. And I think you all know somewhat the history of this. I mean, we've had a statute in place for 15 years and it's worked out, I think, pretty well for co-ops. It's pretty flexible. A year and a half ago, Holy Cross proposed a new tariff that would have had a different compensation from end user customers. And that got pushed back from COSA, the Solar and Storage Association, and they tried to work it out, didn't get that resolved. So the governor appointed this group of people to try to work on a solution, and we're just kind of the loggerheads as to what the solution should be. We proposed an amendment to talk about giving co-ops more flexibility to determine what they would pay. There's no dispute about if you're generating power that's offsetting your consumption, great, everyone agrees that's what you should get, you're getting full retail compensation for that. Question is, what happens when you generate more power than your consumption, you put it onto the grid? Holy Cross's tariff would have said, well, okay, when that happens, but we want to impose this delivery charge. And that's where there was pushback. It would just change the dynamics and the economics of meter systems. And so that was the concern that the Solar Association had. And we were never able to bridge that gap. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, let's, probably don't have time for Q&A right now, but Ken's gonna be here.
Yeah.
Afterwards for annual meeting and has some expectations that we will bring questions to him and have conversations
Absolutely,
about
yeah.
these key items. And just take this opportunity also, thank you for saying so, but to recognize Holly as our CRE representative and say how good of a job she does at
Absolutely.
bringing us all of this information from the meeting. So appreciate that very much. Thanks a lot.
Great, thanks.
All right,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Moving into consent board items, is there any clarification that anyone needs before I take a motion on approving consent board items? Holly,
The only thing I would ask, I noticed that only 2 of us signed up for the Innovation Summit. Would this board be amenable to other people signing up before the next meeting? Simply because it would be a little bit late to make hotel reservations. So I just wanted to throw that out and ask this board,
What are the dates?
like the 28th, 29th of October.
I'm waiting to make sure I get elected. And then I'm going.
yeah, I guess I would just suggest that, I mean, we do have a provision for submitting, if you want to call them late applications for the director of travel and training, and I think at this point they would be, but we don't deny those. So I guess I could directly answer your question that this board would entertain people applying for the Innovation Summit. I have expectations to do that.
Thank you. I was waiting to see some of the speakers fill out. Yeah, me too.
Move to approve the consent board items as posted.
Thanks.
All right, second.
Fuller second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on consent board items, Tim?
Just that I had suggested some changes to the minutes that we incorporated.
They've been incorporated?
Yes,
Okay.
I think it was in the region. Thanks.
All right, so if you haven't refreshed recently, have a look. Those were accepted. Okay, so any other discussion before we vote on consent board items? All right, all in favor of approving the consent board items? Say aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, well done. We are moving into the CEO and staff report. Training. Take it away.
Can you project the dashboard? All right, all right, this is our 85th anniversary. As you guys look around in front of you, you can see our special 85th anniversary logo. We've got some apparel for everyone here to go out and represent the co-op. So we're really excited about this opportunity to connect with our members and celebrate what has been 85 years of focusing on local electricity for local community. Next slide, please. All green check marks. Think one thing I would point out on this, right, is last month we had not a green check mark on our BE sales, right? I think that might have just been a timing issue. As we can see, our BE sales have moved back above our projection. Again, I think some of that is like a pacing issue relative to just when things come online. Next slide, please. All right, you know, we're moving along here, no lost time incidents, and get moving along on our cost of service study. So any questions on this slide? If none, we'll move on to this one. Think, you know, a couple of things I'd like to focus on here. One, I guess, since Emily's here, this might speak a little bit to what her question was about the solar adoption, right? We had 88 net metering solar applications that were approved in August, which is our most ever. So definitely take Emily's comment that we would keep working on letting people know that there are options outside of our that are their current options, and then there are options that are working towards solutions. But really excited that we were able to get 88 new applications approved in 1 month. So and then also had a lot of questions about our Sunnyside, oversubscribed in both categories. So excellent job and excellent interest from our community in Solon and Sunnyside. Any questions on this slide, Joe?
Just a comment on the project schedule budget. Every item in there, you know, focuses on reliability, sustainability, safety, affordability. So those are great projects, and thanks to the staff for finishing those. And we need to tell our members how much of that we put into the system for their benefit.
Absolutely, yeah. We keep working on that. Jerry and his crew is doing a fantastic job out there, and that is a pretty impressive volume of completion by this point. Anything else on this slide? All right, let's go to the next one. We want to focus here on our kind of community development of our summer internship program. Was really successful this year. Have already resulted in one full-time employee being hired as an apprentice lineman, and then we also have one of our interns that's going to be attending Mesa Hotline School on our scholarship, one of our line worker scholarship recipients. So really excited to keep working our way through developing our future labor force here at LPEA. So yeah, and then of course a lot of you are familiar with Emily Nisseldine's continued fantastic member engagement. So I think a lot of you were able to attend at least part of that. So again, great kudos to Emily. Let's go to the next slide.
Looks like Kirsten.
Can-
Oh, Kirsten, yeah, I'm sorry, Kirsten, you're sort of on the corner. Is it on this slide or do we need to go back?
Yeah, no, it's on that one. And I guess it's a question about the union. Is apprentice, journeyman, lineman a required term to be used when we're talking about a union position? Is that why we're saying man instead of worker here?
Yeah, yes, that is sort of tracks the contract and the union terms. Yeah, we've worked on that in our internal style book, if you will, of when do we use line worker and when do we use line man, because to be a little bit transparent, the intern that's attending the hotline school this fall is female, and we're really excited about that and promoting that sort of overall labor force development for line workers. So appreciate the question on that. That we do at a certain point when it comes to job titles, track the job titles that we've mutually agreed on with the union.
Thank you. I know I'm a broken record on that, but I appreciate your ongoing awareness of it. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, and so here we had a little blurb about the fair, right? But here's our fair pictures that are really exciting, right? You can see on the left, all the kids, 160 kids came through and built electric robots. Really fun. I swung by, and the team was fantastic, and then obviously Rachel up there being a great representative for us at the La Plata County Fair, right?
That's our fair director.
Yeah, this is our La Plata County Plotting County Fair, not Archuleta County Fair, to be fair. Yeah. And then, all right, let's go on to the next slide. Patrick, we'll speak to financials.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. August was a little softer than budgeted. We came in at 22,000 for margins, operating margins, which we had budgeted 181,000 approximately. That's primarily due to revenue shortfalls. It's actually exclusively due to revenue shortfalls. We came in under manageable expenses by 21,000. Top line revenue was off by around 300,000, which resulted in gross margins being off budget by about 250K. Large industrial kilowatt sales were down by 9%, small commercial 4%, and residential was about flat. So net effect of that was being off gross margins by about 250K. Primarily on the industrial side, we see natural gas production being off somewhat than what we projected, potentially due to throttling based on market prices, bringing production up and down as the price of the commodity moves up and down. That is some speculation, but that's our guess on what's affecting that large industrial revenue production numbers. So on the balance sheet side, cash still remains in a strong spot, and we're still waiting to make some decisions on what we do with the tri-state rate increase that we passed through to members. That's a pending item that's to be determined, but tri-state did approve that rate increase and get it across the board. I shouldn't say tri-state, FERC approved that rate increase as of August 1st. That came into effect. So the financials that you're looking at for this month have been adjusted for that rate impact, which is good. Quite a bit of acrobatics, so to speak, to adjust the budgeted numbers to model to an appropriate scenario, so to speak. So the financials you are seeing are adjusted for that rate increase. So that being said, on the balance sheet, to go back to that side, capital work in progress, the teams are now we're up something, I think 15 million over prior year, which is a testament to how much work that's being done. From a cash standpoint, it kind of, it's like, cash, but you have to give a lot of credit to the team for getting things done. And you got to give Mother Nature some credit too. You have to have the right conditions to execute on work. So that's my report for August. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, and this was actually in the finance and audit report, the committee report. It has the comment as a result of the draft 2025 Form 7 indicates significant margin pressure at this time. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Could you read a little bit more on that? I need to get.
That's the last sentence. So that was 2025 budget.
Oh, well.
We discussed.
Yes, sorry, I'm pivoting to the actual future budget.
It's a draft.
Yes, it's in working, it's basically in working form, but inflationary pressures, what the work plans are in the individual staff, we're seeing more expenses. We haven't done a rate increase to address inflation since 2020. So that pressure has mounted. The FAC had a great discussion and we're going back to work on this. I think we can sharpen our pencils as been used, and I think we're gonna pull that number back. I've got some ideas on that, but expenses are catching up.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I missed the committee meeting.
No, and it took me a minute to understand, to pivot to the budget.
You missed you.
I'm living in actuals here. Any other questions? All right, thanks so much. Thanks, Patrick.
All right, just rolling through our grant applications. Thanks to Kirsten for staying on us about the rewired application, but we did have that in place, and Dominic was on top of that, so that's up and out the door. And any other questions on this? Yeah, Tim.
So they're all partnerships to achieve LPEA's broadband goal. Is it possible that we could get a big basis? Number of pole attachments approved for that one?
Dan, you think that's a?
Yeah, I think we can.
Yeah.
I think it'd be,
Yeah, approved, meeting underway. Let's do a few of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
In progress.
Mhm.
previous years, it's not been an issue, but I think it's just gonna.
Oh, it absolutely is.
So, I think visibility would help us.
Mhm. Yep, we can provide a metric to you on that. That sounds good. Anything else? Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, it says, goes to the Durango Transit Grant. How will we be involved in that, you know?
Yeah, that was, so an electric van to transport back and forth, sort of like the Roadrunner was running back and forth between Nashville and Durango. This was a Pagosa to Durango transit. Mostly, we were assisting Archuleta County with that grant there.
Is it running yet, or is it's coming out?
Anything else? No other questions on the dashboard? I'll give the floor back to.
Okay, anything else before we move on to, board action section of the agenda for staff? Joe?
I had a question that Emily brought up about the focus group. Obviously, we don't want, none of us should be participating in the focus groups, but is it at all possible that we could sit in and listen to the focus group as they talk? I just find it really helpful to hear what people are saying out there. And I'm just wondering if that's, I don't know how that's being set up.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, I think they are sort of being administered by a third party who I think has some parameters on how they need to function to be their productive. And so I don't believe that that's part of how our contractor that.
Well, I mean, if we wouldn't participate, we'd just be sitting there listening.
Yeah.
Like, we're paying.
Behind the one-way mirror.
Yeah.
We don't have the one-way mirror room, I think. I mean.
But I mean, we're paying this outfit to do this work. So it seems that we should be able to set some,
Yeah.
make some asks too. And even if it's, one or two representatives from the board, I just think it would be helpful for all of us to get.
I can approach them and see what they have to say, but I would say that they're kind of the experts in operating those in a way that we aren't. And if they feel that it's gonna have a negative impact on participation, I'll report back what their professional opinion is.
Yeah, and I'd like to know what they think a negative impact would be from someone else sitting in the room.
Sure, no, I'll
No decision in the moment, but I think it's fair to put that in front of the contractor.
And what are those schedules? Are those
In
scheduled?
October.
In October, okay.
All right, anything else before we move on? Okay, so into, board action. Starting off with FAC, ready to jump on that, Tim?
Sure. All right, so the committee met September 13th, Friday the 13th. It was a really lucky day. And the report is in your packet. And happy to take any questions on the report. And out of that came two recommendations for board action. Find them here. So the first was any questions on the report? Okay. So the first action was the Southwest Power Pool application. The appendix D, it's a approval of the Southwest Power Pool credit guarantee that we will needs board resolution to accompany that application. This is similar to things that we do with CFC. It's simply the co-op saying we will meet our obligations when they come due, and that we guarantee that we will do that. It's pretty standard type of guarantee. There's no letter of credit or any funds that we have to put into place. It's like similar to a credit card application. You promise you'll pay when it's due or under the terms. And it's important that we get this passed prior, so that the application could go in on time on October 1st. And they require a board resolution for that. So that board resolution is 2024-09. It's in the board packet. And since it's coming out of committee, it's a motion to approve that to the board. Doesn't need a second, I believe. Yeah. So are there any questions, discussion? So Patrick, you will have to help me on this. If I can, go ahead, Colin. So on the memorandum dealing with this, and I'm on page 41 of 267. About the third big paragraph down there, it starts with a guarantee approved by SPP transfers, and it goes on. I can't hear you, sorry. The paragraph I have questions on is about the third big one down there, and it starts with a guarantee approved by SPP transfers, and then it goes on. I don't want to read the whole paragraph. I wonder if you could just give me kind of a highlight of what that says. I can't figure it out. I read it and I'm kind of, well, in this case, what does this mean? I'm gonna punt to the attorney. So it looks like it's legal language.
Yep.
And my law degree just working through.
One second, where you are.
Is there a number? D, E, F, G? No.
It's the paragraph that's intended for the rest of them.
Yeah.
And on the memo, not the resolution.
We're saying, so a guarantee approved by SPP. Okay, yes, so this is language taken out of the agreement directly, right? So it's basically is the contract's definition of what the guarantee is, right? So it's transferring to the credit customer, us, a portion of the grantor's creditworthiness, right? So whether that is, so ultimately, when it becomes a financially backed security, that would be something slightly different. This is basically just sort of legal language that's saying, sorry, I'm gonna have to reread it, right? It's basically saying that ultimately, so, and I think this is a good question. Might not be exactly the question you answered, but I think it's the answer you need, right? Is that as we move through the application process, we will probably ultimately need to have some sort of credit facility in place that meets whatever SPP's requirements are for us. They will look at us, they'll look at the size of our load, the amount of volume that we're moving through the RTO, what our balance will be like moving, and then they will ask for a specific security that correlates directly with that, right? So they're not gonna ask us to have the exact same size or shape of security as they would tri-state or, you know, some significantly larger entity. And so that's part of what this is saying, is that this will ultimately, when we get through the process and become a member of SPP, there will be an actual credit facility that's more than just this promise to repay, but that is in a size and type to be determined.
And is there a fairly costly thing to do this?
Costly
Going
thing,
forward, as far as
there's no cost to do this part right now. This is just a corporate action. There's no, we haven't become a member of SPP. We aren't incurring any costs. This is just a promise to make a promise to move through the next phase of the application process.
Right. But when we take that step, you said this is kind of the preamble to it. When we take that step, is that a costly thing for us to provide what we need to?
I mean, it will be proportional to us, right? I don't know.
Patrick,
Do you have any insight cost to it, but it could bond capital to some degree in the form of a letter of credit or security bond. This is essentially the first hurdle to get us into the process. While the application, the concept is pretty simple, the application itself is extensive. So getting over this gets us to, so to speak. Once Dan has kind of completed the load parameters and give a description of what the actual risk looks like to them, then they'll come back to us and suggest potential security enhancements, which could be no more than this guarantee, depending on what they determine on risk structure looks like within SPP.
So Kohler,
Yes,
this is similar to us having a margin account at a brokerage. This is a market maker. The RTO makes a market, so there's a buyer and a seller. So if we're a buyer, we've got to be assuring the seller that we will make payment. That's what we're talking about. And the market itself is like giving us a margin account. And they're gonna say, depending on how much you are doing in terms of volume and the size of your transactions, yeah, you might have to put some money in the account in order to be able to make that transaction. So I don't know if that helps, but this, right now, we're just saying, yes, we will guarantee in this application, we will guarantee that if we participate in the market, we're good for it. That's all it's saying at the moment. And later, if we start making transactions, and get further in the process, then maybe we have to put money out somewhere along the way.
that's kind of the understanding I had, but I got twisted around with this paragraph. I
Good.
couldn't quite figure out where it was going, so I'd like to have you guys write it next time.
These lawyers.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Thank you. Any other questions on the resolution or the memo that came with it? Go ahead.
I'll move to approve.
I've already moved it.
Yeah, so it says it comes out of
Came
the
out of
committee as a
So
recommendation.
this is discussion time, so if there's more discussion or questions, go.
Otherwise, we vote.
Otherwise, we vote. So all in favor of approving this guarantee, raise your hand, and say aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed or abstention? Okay, we got that right. Perfect, thank you. These are great questions. Let me find my place here for a second. All right, the other that we, the other is the, item we talked about in an executive session, which was the audit firm selection. And the recommendation that came out of it. Because they are bids from various firms, we had to, conduct that evaluation. Patrick and the finance department gave us a great table and a scoring system to rate the different firms that bid on the RFP for our new audit firm. And we reviewed all that, and we're basically recommending through the fact that we select the one who had the highest rating and the highest score in that scoring system that the finance department put together and that we reviewed. And that recommendation also coming out of committee is unanimous that we, with 2 abstentions for the staff members that are on the committee, given that selection of the audit firm is really about the board, you know, because there's an element of oversight that they provide to the staff, so we don't want them to have a conflict there, potential conflict. So we move that the selection of Jackson Thornton as the top scorer in the RFP response become our new audit firm. I think that would. So that's a motion on the floor, doesn't need a second, comes out of the committee. So it's open for any discussion. Yes, go ahead.
Another quick question.
Sure.
So we don't need a resolution for this?
I think this is a motion is enough.
Yeah, I mean, so often with so I don't believe Jackson Thornton is a request. So sometimes we provide resolutions for business counterparties. They want to see that actual board record. I don't think Jackson Thornton has asked for any of that. Patrick. So no, and then often for expediency, I'll ask for resolutions because we don't want to wait until next month's minutes to get published to be able to sort of, I don't think we need any of those things that lead to necessitate a resolution.
Possible when we sign the engagement letter that they might ask for some sort of action, but as far as the RFP choice, no, that's not something that's required.
Perfect, thanks. Anyone else? Any other questions? All right, so all in favor of selecting Jackson Thornton as per the motion, please raise your hand, and say aye.
Aye.
Bless you. And any objection or abstention? All right, so that passed this morning. So I think that concludes public session anyway, and the discussion and report from the Finance and Audit Committee meeting. I don't think there's anything else. Those two recommendations. So on to you, Ted.
All right, last call for anything from FAC. Okay, moving on to Committee on Policies. Ready to drive, John? You bet. Oh,
Is this
sorry.
where this was gonna go?
After COP.
Okay, got it.
Item C.
Committee on Policy has in front of you, policy 129 has in front of you again, policy 129. We've been working on it for a good part of the year. And even last, the depth at which the committee feels has hit those objectives. The memo that we asked Graham to capture was for those most recent changes. So those that we had made earlier in the spring and then last winter, those were from our previous recommendations or those previous stabs at it. So the Committee on Policy does recommend the adoption of 129 in this format. And with that, open the floor up to any discussion before we vote.
Just thank you for taking the time to continue to go back to it and get it right.
Yeah, it feels to me that that's pretty easy when we have something to get it right, like you said, we go in there and a comma, if it's explaining something and it can be, it doesn't take a year in 3 years, then we'll know we have produced a good product, right? So, yeah, we're comfortable with that. All right, without any other discussion, move, or we'll look for, what'd you have, John?
I was gonna suggest you forward it to our US Supreme Court.
Oh.
General guidance, directionally appropriate. Oh, I thought it came out great, John.
Okay. It was a good input on that. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much for that work. As we've done for this past year, we've also brought other policies forward, and policy 106 is in front of you. When you read the policy memo that Graham wrote, you'll recognize that this doesn't fit our regular rhythm that we have on bringing it in front of you. You're looking at it, commenting, going back and forth. Very, I would dare say, very minor changes on corrections in here with a little bit of feedback. And with that process, the Committee on Policy is again recommending adoption for this minor modification. You can see the red line version and the final version. Policy 106. Any discussion on that from the board?
This is the political activity.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Any discussion? Seeing none. Ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving policy 106, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll be moving on.
And did we get, Kirsten, could you, I don't think Janelle was able to record your.
Sorry, that's an aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Janelle. All right. Thanks very much, John. Well done there. Let's see, so we do have, as discussed earlier, we do have an item C now on board action. And that's the, agenda modification or the request that Nicole made, in conjunction with Kirsten to review this, potential action on LPEA, essentially approving a resolution or taking a stance on putting a resolution in front of NRECA, having to do with their support of geothermal. So Nicole, I'll let you kind of give that brief explanation. I know, thank you very much for sending it out ahead of time to the board. Hopefully everyone got a chance to look at that.
Okay, I just sent a copy of the text to Drew. I think Drew might be able to share it, the resolution text.
That we could just let Nicole read the resolution text.
Okay, sure.
When we get to that point, but maybe just the briefest background on why we're here now.
Sure, and Kirsten, please participate. I was just gonna go through a little of the background and then read the resolution. Sound good?
That sounds great.
Yeah, so this is something Kirsten and I have been working on. We would like to add this resolution to the member resolutions for the upcoming year at the NRECA regional meeting. I think this is super timely since we just heard been hearing month after month, the major reduction in revenues from our large industrial, primarily oil and gas. And we've been talking a lot about geothermal. Obviously, this is a future idea, but it's something, this is how things get moving. And currently, there's nothing in the NRECA member resolutions. I did a document search. There's no reference to geothermal at all. And as we know, oil and gas is about 20% of our load and a really important member of our community. So we thought that with the synergies between geothermal and oil and gas, this would be a win-win resolution we could put forward. And we think that there could be some support among different factions of the NRECA membership. So I will go ahead and read the proposed language. I kind of modeled it off of we modeled it off the language for support for nuclear. Just kind of followed their form. So the resolution language is 6.2. Or actually, I wouldn't even read that because I don't know if that's relevant, but we urge NRECA to support the continuation and expansion of geothermal energy generation. Funding for research, development, and construction of geothermal power generation, a low carbon dispatchable resource, is critical for the reliability of our nation's power supply. The oil and gas and geothermal industries have numerous similarities that provide new opportunities for geothermal expansion, from advances in drilling and well construction to co-production possibilities in existing oil and gas basins. We can leverage the extensive knowledge, technology, skill, and expertise of the oil and gas sector, allowing the geothermal industry to tackle barriers to geothermal deployment, while also including fossil fuel-based communities and workers in the transition to clean energy. We urge NRECA to work with the administration, Congress, and appropriate federal entities to support producing geothermal heat and electricity from existing subsurface infrastructure and support new areas of exploration.
Great. And so to clarify what we're trying to accomplish here, in order for this to move from this boardroom in front of the NRECA for consideration down the road, obviously long, drawn out process. The next steps in the process require that there be board support from this board. And that's what we're trying to accomplish today. Just to stand behind this resolution and say, we would like to see it move forward through the NRECA.
And before the motion, I would like to recognize Kent because he's actually our next step on this. So we do it at the board, and then CREA takes it, socializes it with their board, and if there is support for it, then he's on the resolution committee. And so in Sacramento, it could actually get on this year's calendar, and we don't have to wait for a whole nother year to get this on. So Kent has been very supportive in getting this through so we can have some action at the end of this month. Thanks, Kent.
Kirsten. Tim?
I'm not sure. Are you looking for a motion? Because I would make a motion.
Absolutely.
To approve this. I think it's a hot topic.
There we go.
But I do.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Rachel?
I'm just curious, thanks for bringing this forward. I know we've talked about getting a bit more involved in the space. And as you craft this, at what point, or has this gone in front of folks who actually work in the geothermal sector to ensure that the language is not, I know it's very vague, right? It's very general, but just, I don't know, really good policy has stakeholders at the table informing it to make sure it captures what we're looking for. So does that need to happen here, Kent? Does that happen later? Like, when do you get more information? Or more?
Sorry.
Oh, just, I didn't know if this has gone in front of anyone who's actually working in the geothermal realm to make sure the language is.
Do you want me to address this, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So,
Process.
The NRECA resolutions process is convoluted. There's no doubt about it. You know, any of you individually could propose an amendment to the resolutions. This board could, CREA can. It helps to have board action. And I think if you would like CREA to support this, I think part of the motion should be and the request that the CREA organization support this. And if that happens, then I will send out an email to our board and say, I think this is a resolution that's not controversial at all. I think we should support this. And if I don't get any pushback, then I will next week on the resolutions committee, I will send this out to that committee. They will then have to decide whether they have to support it or not. I don't know. It's kind of short notice. Whether they will have time to think about it and support it, I'm not sure, but I'll make the pitch for it. I wouldn't have to do that. Any of whoever attends, I guess if Kirsten's gonna be there, she can stand up at the resolutions committee meeting and ask that they consider this. But it helps to have the support of your board, CREA, and the more support you have, then the more likely it is to get passed. So I don't know if that's responsive to your, and this is just, you know, the Region 7 meeting, there's 5 regional meetings. This compendium changes and it all goes back to the National Resolutions Committee in January. That committee then will decide which of these amendments to approve and accept for the March annual meeting. So there's multiple steps here. This is kind of the first part of it.
I guess my question is, does it get workshopped and retooled with additional inputs and stakeholders, or do you, like, whoever's coming forward, whatever that entry point is, do you need it to be rock solid?
So it's your proposal at this point. If someone at this committee meeting wants to say, well, I like it except for this language, they have the ability to say, I'd like to edit it X, Y, Z. The committee that votes on it, it's really an iterative process. But I think at the start, they would just take the language you proposed. That's what I would say. Here's the proposed resolution that we want to get on the NRECA books. If someone on NRECA staff thinks there are form and stylistic changes that should be made, they can recommend that to the national committee. So let's say it goes through all this process and just Region 7 approves it. The national committee will have to consider it in January. NRECA staff may say, okay, the subject matter is fine. We will have a different format we'd like to see, and that they're free to make those edits. Hopefully that gets to your point.
Yeah.
And Rachel, also, I think you bring up a very good point, and frankly, no, we did not go to the geothermal side. We were thinking more from the cooperative side. Yes, we want to. We got very excited at last year's lunch meeting where that woman from Utah talked, and it was like, wow, this is a really cool project. So you have I'm taking as a suggestion, and I do want to talk to that woman. I don't think it's going to change the language because it's a mother apple pie kind of language. But it's a great point that this is coming from one side, and we should never try to do anything from one side. So thank you for that.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Moved and seconded, Fuller?
So do we need to make an amendment to the motion to include what Kent suggested so that we can go to him?
We certainly could. I don't think it's mandatory. I think Kent suggested that if we do make it part of our motion that we ask for CREA's support, it has more teeth, I guess.
So I would modify the motion then to approve it and ask for CREA support.
Thank you, Tim.
And so, does that need another second?
Second. Yeah.
And then just one other thing of interest, that last year's energy innovation, they had a thing about geothermal. And I don't know if that's recorded or not. Someone can look at it again, but it's a fascinating thing to watch and see. If you have interest in it.
Yeah. All right. Dan, you were going to make a comment.
Yeah, you had mentioned earlier about loading some of the technicalities past some of the oil and gas folks, and then conversations I've been having and everything, the one thing that might pop up is the phrase existing subsurface infrastructure. They've looked at that a lot, can we just use some of these existing bores to make this work? And they've run into problems with diameter casing being a little small of what they have. So just bringing to your attention, that might be more restrictive than they might like. So just that if there's a better way to word around that. It could be attempt saying that might be better.
That's,
Yes. Appreciate the deeper technical part of that. I would sort of take your comment. I did that even without.
it's a well-grounded.
We're gonna get out of this industry, guys.
You're getting in deep.
But I would go back to Kirsten's comment that the language really is, and I'll use your phrase, mom and apple pie. And I think it's quite easy within that language to, to work around the, we don't know enough to craft it perfectly, and I think that's acceptable. And this is really just support and background.
And if I can just give a little color too, we also proposed a distributed energy resolution or distributed energy resource resolution, and decided that we should go through the proper channel because it needed more robust input. And I think, like both of you have pointed out, I think a weakness of this is that we are doing it a little bit fast. And when we do it, the formal process of, next spring into summer, we'll definitely have more space for input, because that's really helpful. And thank you for that.
Great. Any other discussion before we vote on Tim's motion? All right, then, all in favor of the geothermal support resolution, say aye.
All right.
Aye. Any opposed? Or abstentions? All right, motion passes. Well done, Nicole, Kirsten, thank you for pushing that process through. And if there are any more puns, let's get them out of the way. Great, so we are now through board action, and I don't see any reason why we don't take a 10-minute break at this point. Perfect. Section 6, attorney update. And we do have Matt on with us, so go ahead and take the floor, Matt.
Good morning. Nice to see you all.
Thanks.
Couple quick updates, both on the FERC front. This will be pretty short. Can take any questions. The sleeving piece, which is relevant to the exit and resources that be secured as part of the exit and withdrawal, remains in settlement posture. That process is moving forward in front of a settlement judge. I can provide a little bit more detail in executive session as to where exactly that sits. So that's item 1. Item 2, formula rate proceeding is finally getting kicked off in settlement judge procedures as well. That'll start Monday, September 23rd. I expect that first settlement conference to be largely scheduling. As you'll recall, there's discovery and a series of process steps as those move forward within the FERC paradigm. So those are really the 2 big updates from my end. Obviously having discussions with Tri-State to move the withdrawal forward as well. But can take any questions on the litigation regulatory side if you have.
Okay, public session questions for Matt, buddy. All right, not seeing any right now, Matt. Okay, that would be the end of the public update, and next item on the agenda is to move into executive session. So I would take the motion for that.
So move.
Thanks, Joe. Is there a second? Joel?
And just to state the topics of the executive session would be attorney update on FERC and related actions, power supply, contract review, and selection committee update.
You okay with that, Joe? Perfect. All right, all in favor of moving into executive session for those three topics?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstain? Question?
We were, similar to how we give a public update on the, power supply, we had talked about giving a very, high level update from the PO hiring, right?
We have some
action coming out, and so I think if that action isn't adequate update, let's tackle it after executive session. And bring it up.
Thank you.
Okay, so anything else? Actually, I guess we have, unanimous to move into executive session, so, we'll go ahead and sign off of the public meeting, move into executive session. And then come back to the public later. We're on, coming out of executive session, on section 8 of the agenda, board actions resulting from executive session. We will have a few of those. We'll start off with action on, power supply contract. So is there a motion?
I move to approve, resolution 2024-10, approval of master power purchase and sales agreement.
Is there a second? Kohler for second. Okay, discussion on that? It's appropriate for public session. Okay, seeing none, take a vote. All in favor of approval of resolution 2024-10, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? Okay, thank you. Motion passes. On to second action, related to CEO selection. Do we have a motion for that?
I move to authorize Director Compton to execute a contract between LPEA and CEO candidate as discussed in executive session. Once executed, to authorize staff to first notify LPEA employees of the decision and then the general public.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Double second.
I'm gonna give it to Rachel. Rachel second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor of John Mitchell's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to the report section. We note we're coming close to the end of our agenda time, so as we have done in the past, I would just leave this open for any of the directors to point out specific points in those reports, which are obviously all included in the board packet, or any other directors to ask specific questions that came up during your review of those reports. So anybody? Kohler?
On the attorney report, the very last bullet, it talks about National Historic Preservation. Is this an issue that's affecting LPA at this time, or is this just
Yes.
a general issue on Colorado?
It's affecting us particularly, and it's affecting other co-ops in Colorado and other utilities in Colorado that are sort of trying to develop especially transmission projects that go across federal land, right? So if there is federal permit involved or federal land involved, this National Historic Preservation Act comes into play, and there's a state historic preservation office that you have to kind of coordinate with and work through, and it's sort of the scope of what needs to be reviewed and how burdensome it is and what is appropriate to the nature of contract is problematic. And it's not just problematic in Colorado, it's problematic for utilities across the country. So, you know, the idea is to sort of try and find different ways to communicate with each other. If you look at that list on my report, right, state of Colorado is there, and the Colorado Energy Office form, right, and I believe the governor's office might have had someone there, but this really is a federal land issue, and you don't see any federal agencies listed there, right? So it's still that didn't get everybody in the same room. So, you know, I mean, that's just right, you know.
We have some projects that.
We have some projects that are crossing federal land that the U.S. Forest Service disagrees with the State Historical Preservation Office on what the scope of review needs to be for that project.
Thank you. Kind of like the cannonballs a few years ago.
I don't recall that, but.
Yeah, they found them over at Pagosa putting in the water.
Oh, really? Wow. I mean, that's not to diminish the fact that there are absolutely extremely relevant cultural artifacts that need to be preserved that might be adjacent to work that we're doing. I mean, this isn't to sort of minimize all historic preservation as an impediment to progress, but it's sort of like, what is the appropriate scope? And working with all the partners, and I'll give Ken a shout out, because he's the one who invited me to kind of help present the co-op perspective as opposed to the Excel perspective, right? They had, the big heavyweights in from there, but we got equal airtime to say that this isn't just like an Excel problem or an investor problem where utilities that need to report money to Wall Street are having problems. This is a problem for a distribution co-op that's owned by its members and funded by its members.
Great. Okay, any other questions around director reports? Then anything else rattling to the agenda? All right. Wonderful. I guess I would just, before we adjourn, I would just compliment the board for today's work and the work that we've done over the past month. It's been a heavy lift, and it's been truly inspiring and impressive, the level of commitment that you have all put in. So, I, as current board president, appreciate that help and effort tremendously. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
Oh, now I got more. Dan.
I'd like to give a shout out to Rachel for the job she did at the Platte County Fair. For someone who come in green, not knowing, never been to an auction.
Is that called a greenhorn?
And anyway, she did an excellent job, and I was a little worried. There, sit down. She had it all taken care of, so.
Coming from someone who knows what an excellent job is, so yes, couldn't get a better compliment, really.
Yay.
Great.
Rachel.
You got the denim coat.
Thanks for the kudos. All right, well then, we'll adjourn the, Laura, one more thing.
One request, I was with our board packet, when there's pages added, can we get an email telling us where those pages were added and what they were, because otherwise we have to go through almost everything.
Yeah.
To find what was updated. If we
Some
could,
sort of edit log.
Yeah, just give us a clue what was changed or added, please.
Thanks for the suggestion. Yep. Noted. All right, thanks, everyone. Meeting adjourned. On to annual meeting.
All right, see you at the annual meeting. Bye-bye, guys.
Hi, Kirsten. I agree.